Howdy. Welcome back to the golden age of leather. Biker stories from the 80s, 90s, till today, whatever year this is. So just a brief notice here about things. We have a dog here. Why is this red light flashing? What does that mean, lady? You see that red light? Are we running out of juice? Or does that just mean we're recording?
It means we're recording.
Oh, you see that guy? Say hello, Benjamin Bowie. Ugh. You want to straighten me back up there? Anyway, welcome back to the golden age of leather, and we're going to continue on today with the some more of the story of Dolores DeGroff, the murder and brutal killing. I guess murder is brutal killing, but wow, excuse me. As you can probably tell, this is unscripted, coming right off what's left in my brain, and we don't do any editing. We could, we really could, but we're not going to. I just chose to make it organic. So, the heck's that? You like organic? Somebody's coming down my street, which is a rare deal.
It's a road grader.
Oh, it's a road grader. Well, now, that just tells you where I live, we don't have paved roads. So,
Looks like Ralph.
the road grader's a big deal. Hell, having company's a big deal. Nobody comes out here, and believe me, I like it that way. Right on the back door, if you look out to my garage, right on my garage, there's a sign that says, "You are now in range." And on the front door, it says, "These premises are protected by Blue Heeler." And one thing about old Bowie there, I mean, he's a friendly sort, and he's a nice, lovable guy, but if he doesn't know you, he's probably going to nip you, and if he doesn't like you, he's probably going to bite you. Just that way. And I warn people, but people don't listen, unfortunately. So if you come to my house and you get bit, that's on you, not me or Bowie. He just wants to find out what you taste like. Anyway, so we left off with me getting my hair cut at a barbershop where another club member's wife, ex-wife, I don't really know, Preacher was his name. His wife was cutting my hair and telling me all about the bulldog, chainsaw, and I even forget the other asshole's name. That's how crappy they are in my book. It'll come to me. Speed bump, maybe that's what we called him. I don't remember, but I remember bulldog and chainsaw. And anyway, she was telling me they were running around bragging about killing somebody, and so I'm like, oh, this is news to me. I'm happily living my life, partying, smoking, playing in a rock band, doing my thing, riding. Wasn't even riding with the Freedom Riders. No, we were not a club at that time per se, and so nothing was going on. And so I was quite surprised, but you know how things go. Once you kind of lift the curtain on something, you start to get the rest of the story. As old what's his name on the radio used to say there, Paul Harvey, that's his name. Sorry, my memory's not quite as quick as it used to be, thanks to probably marijuana, but we didn't talk about that. We don't want to get demonetized, because hell, they're not paying me anything anyway. So anyway, we started to I started to kind of hear bits and pieces, but I still didn't know who, where, why. I just knew who did it, if you will. So one day my buddy Jim Baker, how you doing, Jim? You might catch this. I see him around. He's on Facebook. He needed a ride, and I don't generally give guys a ride on a bike, but he was broke down somewhere or something like that. So I gave him a ride, and we were going down the kind of the main drag in town there, and got pulled over. And I'm like, he copped in like nothing about my bike. He's like, your bars are too high. He was just beating me up on every little infraction, and I really pissed him off because I had ape hangers, and they were pretty high, but I went and just gave him a tug and pulled him down, and he had a fit. You gotta have your handlebars tight. You can't have them loose like that. Anyway, he didn't write me a ticket, but he wanted to know all about this murder, and I'm like, I keep hearing about this, but I don't even know what you're talking about. So he kind of filled me in a little bit. And so I still really didn't have a lot of details, but this is the part about the known associate thing. He's like, some people are known associates because they thought it involved the whole club of the Freedom Riders. They thought that somehow I was tied into it, and murder just isn't really my game. I'm into lots of things, but murder is not one of them. Anyway, so I start to hear more about this whole thing, and it turns out, and I'm going to break it down the way I know it. Some people might have heard it differently, but this all comes to me firsthand, is that they got Diggy over there, and they convinced him they would take better care of him than Tramp and Wheels, that they would take better care of him, and they were lying. They kept him basically locked in a room. They didn't want to feed the guy, from what I understand. But I guess at one point he'd had enough. He wanted to go back and live with Tramp, and he wanted out of the situation, but he was cornered because the only people there were basically liars. And so they told him they would let him go if he just signed his last check over to them, and he refused, and they beat him up, and finally he agreed to sign his check. So I guess at that point in time, they decided that he wasn't going nowhere. And I don't really know the details because, again, I wasn't there. I'm just telling you what I heard. But wow, holy shit, did you feel that? The earthquake. Something just shifted in the universe. Oh, wait, it was the battery went dead. Crapped out Chinese batteries. Mr. Wong, I'm talking to you. You know, that's the thing. You think China's this big world superpower, they're going to invade, and boy, oh boy, they won't even make it over here before their shit falls apart. You know, go to any Harbor Freight and see for yourself. And I actually like Harbor Freight. I just don't like what they sell. Anyway, where were we? Oh, they killed Diggy, I guess is where we stopped. I kind of have to get my combobulation back. Anyway, so apparently they killed him. I don't know how. I just know that the Bulldog is the one that was accused of murdering him. He's the one that stood trial for the actual murder. The other two were just associates and what do you call it? Accomplices. Thank you. And anyway, but this is where the story takes a real evil twist. So apparently it was Halloween, and they were getting ready to have a big party out there. Now, they needed the money from his check so they could have this party because there was a club that had come to, they were trying to get patched over, if you will, to another club called the United Brotherhood. And I'm going to mention them because I've never seen or heard anything else about them. And that may or may not be the actual name of the club. They were from Texas. And in my book, there's really only one club from Texas, and we all know who they are. They're the bad boys on the block. Anyhow, they were trying to make an impression to these bunch of guys here that had come up from Texas to check them out. Well, I guess they're all partying, and they just put poor old Diggy in a black trash bag. They dismembered him. This is the twisted part. I kind of have to really think about this because it was put out of my brain for a very long time, and I don't really like to bring it up because it's just crappy. But apparently they had cut his head and his hands off. Now that takes a real fucked up person to do that. They'd cut his head and his hands off, and they burned those in the fireplace because I guess they figured no hands and no head, you would not have identifiable marks. They couldn't figure out who it was. So then they stuck his body in a garbage bag and proceeded to have a Halloween party. But at some point where these other club members were present, they pulled his body out and were having a contest to see how they could stick their knives in it, you know, by throwing it down mumbly peg style, you know. And that freaked these guys out. To their credit, they just got the hell out of there and headed back to Texas. This is what I'm told. And they had their little fun there, put the body back in the bag, and had a big old barn burning party out there at this place they were staying with, which is out, ironically, by that cemetery out on Highway 30, if you know where that is, people that live there. And anyway, so I don't know if they showed other people or how these other people came to find out about it, but the word was getting out all over the place. So they decided that they needed to get rid of this body, and they took it out on this ranch that's kind of east of town, out on the Hereford Ranch. You know, you should be able to put together the name of the town. I'm not going to say it. We all know where it is. I'm from there originally. It's not top secret. Anyway, it's probably out there for a couple weeks, and somebody came across it, somebody that works there, and then the cops got involved, and then here's this body with no head and no hands, which, you know, that's pretty creepy. So they start looking into it, and they figured out who it was. Well, I guess what happened is, to be fair, Chainsaw, and I can't think of this other moron's name. They're both, I think one of them died in prison as well. I don't really know, but I think the writing was on the wall, and they decided they better go to the cops and see if they could cut a deal better than getting the electric chair. And so they ended up fessing up to it or something. I'm not really positive of that. You could probably Google it all and find articles about it. Anyway, they arrested these guys, and I was never happier. No more worrying about Bulldog coming to my place, you know, because as I mentioned earlier, I took a pot shot at him, and I would have just shot him if I could have. You know, I don't really like jail much. The food sucks, the company's not great, and the sleeping arrangements suck. Anyway, they arrested those guys, and they ended up standing trial, and they found all three of them guilty, and I think they found Bulldog's fat, shitty girlfriend guilty. And I think she only did a couple years because she testified against them. And of course, she was a woman. She didn't know. She was just there and had no control of the situation. But she was one of the people bragging about it. So her name was Sherry. So fuck you, Sherry. Anyway, I don't even know if she's alive, dead, or wherever she is. And then Chainsaw, and we'll just call him Armpit. I don't really know what his name. I do if I sat and thought about it, but then I'd look stupid just sitting here going, more stupid than I already look. Thank you. But anyway, I'm pretty sure they gave Bulldog a life, and they gave the other ones like 20 years, 25 years, and they're probably out by now. This was a long time ago, people. And anyway, I know Bulldog died in prison because people I know were in there with him, and at some point, sorry, I got an itch. At some point, he was on steroids. Now, how you get steroids into prison, I don't really know, but he was buffed up like, he was just like a walking muscle. And he was the barber. Go figure. A guy that hacked somebody's head off's the barber. You gonna give him scissors around your throat? I think not. Anyway, he ended up ripping the barber chair out of the ground and throwing it. So they ended up putting him in the hole, which, if you're familiar with prison, is no place that's too fun. But anyway, I heard that he had died up there, and I'm pretty sure one of the other ones died too. So anyway, I think that's where we're going to wind that part of the story up. But believe it or not, there is more. There's the aftermath of what it was like living in a shitty little town after something like that goes on, and pretty much everybody just kind of figures you're involved in it because you're a biker and you used to be in that type of situation. And then we'll move forward from there, and that'll be on the next installment of the Golden Age of Leather. Now, listen to me and listen closely. If you have not liked, subscribed, or commented down below, then do that. You know, I don't get anything out of here, but I just like to see myself get, you know, maybe 100,000 subscribers someday, you know, big time. I'd like to make a video and have it go viral. And as you know, we have other videos that we've been doing, car stuff mostly, you name it. And that brings me to the question of, we have lots of other things. So I've ridden in 2 different 1% motorcycle clubs. I've done a ton of things, and we're gonna, this particular part, we're gonna try to keep it mostly biker content. And so I'd like to know, if you know me, then you were relevant to any of that, and maybe you don't want your name mentioned, you might reach out to me and tell me that. I don't usually mention people by name unless I want shit to fall on their head, so to speak. Not you, Jim, but I don't usually mention people by name. However, if you don't want me to recant some tale, and there's a lot of dark ones that I could go down those roads that maybe the statute of limitations is run out on, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, we're not going to get ourselves in trouble or implement anybody here, but, for instance, one story involves Mushy, one of the Freedom Riders. He's mentioned early on in this story, getting drunk out at a titty bar that's 12 miles out south of town, coming back down the highway, and he was standing on his bike, going down the highway at 75 miles an hour, and then somehow losing his balance and doing an Indian Larry, except luckily for him, he didn't land on his face like Larry did, the guy that let his whole family down. I'm not proud of Indian Larry, so you won't catch me saying anything nice really about him. But anyway, he ended up sliding down the road on his shoes for about 700 yards. It had to have gotten hot. Finally, luckily for him, he'd slowed down and he did a head over ass barrel roll down the highway and into the ditch, and we had to go pick him up out of the frickin' ditch and pick up his bike. But the funny part about this story is the next day he was so drunk that night that he really didn't remember any of that, or couldn't figure out what happened to his bike, which was basically demolished, and I ended up buying it from him. But that's a whole nother story. I got tales of titties, drugs, debauchery, fond biker partying, fond memories of Sturgis, riding with my brothers. In fact, I was going to talk about Sturgis for when coronavirus was on and they had everybody locked out of going up there. But me and my brother, the Outlaw X, went up there. You can catch him on X's Chopper Blog Shop. And he's got a great channel over there. Go check him out. Got a lot more viewers than I do. But I was going to talk about our last trip up to Sturgis. One of my buddies, Rusty, we went up there. We had a interesting time. And I've got tales of Sturgis that'll blow your mind. Anyway, like, subscribe, share, comment. Tell me what you want me to talk about. Maybe you know a story I might have forgot, because it's been a life, let me tell you. Anyway, so I'm happy that you all have come again. And hey, camera lady.
Yeah?
You want to come and shut this off so I don't have to fumble around for the button? She hates it when I fumble for buttons. To this day, I can't find the button. Have a great day.